My name's Elia Locardi, and I'm a full-time travel and landscape photographer. I've teamed up with Fstoppers and the filter company NiSi to produce 8 unique mini tutorials to show you how I use these filters as I travel the world looking for the perfect photograph. Subscribe to the channel below to join this adventure, and welcome to Puerto Rico.
Hey everyone, my name is Elia Locardi, and in this lesson, I'm going to be combining a solid neutral density filter and teaching you how to use a polarizer to mitigate reflections in the foreground. So this time, I did what I do best, and I found a somewhat treacherous location that looked really cool. Looked a lot more simple from up above, but I kind of got in this little crevasse here, scared a few crabs away, and every once in a while a big wave comes through, and so far it hasn't taken away the camera, but you know, it's still early, so we'll see. But it's a pretty cool location. I got these awesome leading lines of this little chasm here, these rocks, the colors. I kind of have borders on the side all the way into the background. While the sky's not that interesting, the dynamic foreground certainly makes up for it. But in order to take advantage of this foreground, I really want to be able to see these rocks. And the reason I can't see them very well is just because the sky is reflecting on them. So let's start how we usually do by just taking a quick snapshot. Even without the swell coming in, we can see that reflection on the water itself. Now, with the swell coming in, we just see a bunch of white madness. So that's not what we want either. We need a mix of the two. But in order to be able to see through the water, we can use a simple trick with a polarizer here. You may only be familiar with screw-on filters, but I'm gonna be using the NiSi square holder kit, and it screws onto the front, and on the back of it, conveniently enough, there is a polarizer. So this polarizer attaches, and if you see those notches, it's locked in and it rotates. So as you rotate the polarizer, you can direct where exactly you want to mitigate the reflections. So in this case, I could do it in the background, or here, what I really want is the foreground. The nice thing about this is it doesn't matter what neutral density I have in the front, I can easily combine this together. So I can use any combination of solid graduated neutral density filters on top of this polarizer. The polarizer attaches directly to the adapter ring. By default, 82 millimeter. This is an 82 millimeter thread lens. So in this case, it screws right on. Then there are these little knobs here on the back of it that I can twist that polarizer. After this is in place, the next step is to attach the filter holder with the filter already in place. It's really easy to take off if the water's coming. And down here with this water, I really want to make sure that I go ahead and lock it in and make sure that it's as secure as possible. So before we get into the timed exposures, I'm just going to take this right off. Take a look as I rotate this polarizer, what it's doing to the water. As I'm rotating it, now it becomes clear that I can see those rocks. And you can see if I rotate it back, now we can see those reflections again. So in this case, I just find a good balance where it mitigates enough of those reflections of light in the foreground. Once I have the polarizer set, I don't really have to mess with it anymore. I can just go ahead and put this back on, and we can talk a little bit more about the timed exposure. So the light is falling off pretty quickly here in the afternoon. If I set it to manual mode with this 6-stop filter, let's start with 2-second exposures. So if I want to find the correct exposure for that, let's do something like f5.6, ISO 100, and 2 seconds. So as this is coming in, let's take some test shots. So I want to take some different exposures here to kind of figure out what I like the most. And I don't really want any of the foam sitting here for too long. I'd like to see it washing in and out. Not washing me in and out, but washing in and out of the frame. The more uncomfortable and wet you get, that's how you know you're doing it right. At this point, I already decided on 2 seconds, but I'm just gonna play around a little bit because I feel like I got the shot. I'm gonna try some 1 second exposures to try to get it to feel a little bit more turbulent and dramatic. So changing the settings real quick, we'll leave it at f6.4 and go to ISO 200. The thing you have to realize about long exposure photography too is you're taking a lot more time doing it. So 1 second, 2 second exposures, they're fairly quick. But when we start talking about 30-second exposures or 60-second exposures in conditions like this, if the tide's changing rapidly, if the sun position is changing rapidly, you're really not gonna have a huge window of time to shoot. So you're severely limiting the amount of shots you can take in a shoot or in the shoot itself. So it's good to experiment a little bit, but make sure you get the shot you want before you start experimenting. This ended up being a pretty fun and challenging location. When I first got down here, I showed you guys what it looks like straight out of camera. Then we added the polarizer, we could see through the water, and then with a little bit of neutral density on the front of the camera and a 2 second exposure, this is the final shot. That wraps things up here. A big thanks to NiSi for sponsoring this video and giving us all this really cool gear. Shout out to my wife Naomi for telling me to buy waterproof shoes. That helped a lot. In the next lesson, we're gonna find something even more interesting and ramp up the complexity even more.
Throughout this series, NiSi and Fstoppers are giving away over $600 worth of filters and tutorials. If you want to enter all 8 contests, make sure you click the link in the description below every time a new video is released.